Welcome to Conversations on Activating 5.0. I'm Jim DeVries, founder of Enhance International Group and your host for today's podcast. This podcast series is where we dive deep into the minds of technology leaders who have not only navigated through uncertainty, but have emerged stronger, more innovative, and more resilient. Whether you're a seasoned technology executive or an emerging leader, each episode offers unique access to the strategies and insights of top leaders who are redefining and applying technology in today's dynamic environment. Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with a remarkable leader, Hosni Adra, CEO of Createasoft, digital twin and simulation technologies from the great state of Illinois. Hosni Adra is a visionary leader and the founder of Createasoft, a pioneering company established in 1992, specializing in advanced simulation and predictive analytics software. With decades of expertise in system modeling, optimization, and digital transformation, Hosni has been at the forefront of helping businesses across industries achieve operational excellence. As a trailblazer in the field of simulation with 7 patents, Hosni developed revolutionary tools such as SimCAD Pro and the Digital Twin Studio, empowering organizations to visualize, analyze, and optimize their processes in real time. His innovative solutions allows companies to simulate complex systems, predict outcomes, and drive data-driven decision-making, setting new standards in the industry. His book, Success with Simulation, a definitive guide to process improvement success using simulation for healthcare, manufacturing, and warehousing, was published in 2018. Hosni's passion for innovation and commitment to solving complex challenges have made him a trusted advisor for Fortune 500 companies, healthcare providers, logistics firms, and manufacturing for over 3,600 clients. In 2011, Createasoft released its first version of the digital twin and now has advanced its AI capabilities. Createasoft's patented multi-threaded engine leverages real-time data to balance sales, inventory, and operational planning, delivering return on investments within 3 to 6 months. Hosni and his team are focused in providing simulation tools to enable practitioners to simulate and optimize their ecosystem in real time. Hosni is known for his engaging communication style, making complex topics accessible to diverse audiences. He's a sought-after speaker, mentor, and thought leader in the realms of operational efficiency and technology-driven solutions. When he's not empowering businesses and cutting-edge solutions, Hosni enjoys biking, martial arts, and gardening, maybe even climbing that mountain in the background there. So with that, I really want to thank you for taking the time today. I know you're extremely busy, and I want to just kick it off with, what are your thoughts when you hear technology 5.0, because we're not quite there yet, obviously, but we're getting there. What comes to your mind and what makes it compelling to you?
Well, first, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate all the good words there. Technology is ever evolving. I mean, if you go back in history and look at the calculator and how it changed what we do in everyday operations. And at that time, a calculator was what we call AI today. It almost has the same impact. And that progressed through, the generation of the PC and how it all became what we consider today as normal in everyday life. And this technology 5.0 is just another step in the direction of evolving it to be more accessible to everybody. Calculators were only available to a few. Then having a PC was very key. And, going through the floppy drives and everything from a storage perspective. And boy, when we had 10 megs of space on our PC, we were very happy. Today, no one talks about megabytes anymore. We're talking terabytes and on. And the same with technology 4.0 and 5.0 and, soon to be 6.0 going forward. The key to 5.0 is that we're going to take all that information that we already learned, and then we're going to make it accessible to people so they can be better at what they do, right? So that's really the key component that drives technology 5.0 is how do we make it more of a tool that everybody is going to use, not just key component and key people within the organization and daily activities for that matter.
So would you say it's technology, as you said, for the people to help enable the person to perform at their highest potential?
Exactly. It is an enabler. I mean, if it is not an enabler, then no one would adopt it, right? If you look at technology or industry 4.0 and where it's generating a ton of data. A lot of people can't decipher all these graphs and charts and information that's available. Technology 5.0 make that accessible to basically everybody within the organization. So, going back to lean concepts, and when lean concepts were created, they were set up to empower the worker to do more things, right? Now I see that technology 5.0 is actually driving AI and all this new automation, new technologies that are driven to actually provide what lean was set up to do, but on a much broader scale in a much easier to access environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you won't have to know what a Pareto chart is in the future.
That is correct.
Your system.
That is correct. Having all these different charts and names, and not everybody. I mean, not everybody understand how standard deviation works. Not everybody understand what an average or a moving average and all these key terms. But technology 5.0 should allow everybody to understand and put it in their own terms, what that means to them. So, what is my lead time and how is that impacting everything else that's happening? And we started to see that. I mean, you see that when you put your information on Google Maps, you say, I want to go somewhere. It's kind of telling you some of that information in a meaningful way. So I know a lot of people don't see that as technology 5.0, but it's the start.
It's
kind of where things are progressing.
Well, look forward to the talking more about that and as we move through the podcast here. But first, let's take a step back and say, back when you're young in the 90s or 80s and you're thinking about what do you want to be when you grow up? And did you always say, I want to be a technology leader? Is that what you wanted to do? What inspired you to follow this path?
It all started, back at the early age in I wouldn't go to the 80s. I would go back to the early 70s.
All right. Nice. Good old
where,
days.
Really old days. And, I grew up in Lebanon, and most of my teens were during the Civil War. We didn't have a lot of stuff. Of course, we didn't have iPads and, any of that stuff. So our tool set was very small. And the toys we had, when they break, we had a tendency to just take them apart and make them something else. So we always had this idea of, just because somebody designed the car this way, doesn't mean that's how it should be. So from those days, I actually started to change and play with the technology and modify things to do, other activities and evolve them in my own world. And of course, with other people that, I was playing with. And that's really sparked a lot of the interest going forward. As I got older, I got more involved in the programmable calculators. I was so amazing when I got one that we had 16 kilobytes of memory on that thing.
That's fantastic.
And we were trying to figure out ways to fit all this code in that 16K. It was a challenge, really. We were challenging ourselves to do it. And, it evolved through the years as we were going through, but that drove me to really like technology. It just always see what's out there, try to make it better, try to change it, see where it applies. and kind of move it forward. I would say in the early 90s is when I started to make the decision that I should actually start something on my own where actually I can become a leader in this field. And there's few events that happened at that time that actually drove me to that, which at that time didn't seem to be the right moves. But hindsight is always 2020, right? So, and here we are today. It's a lot of learning along the way, definitely learning from a lot of people, learning from you quite a bit. So it was a reciprocal learning experience, to say the least.
So are there any specific stories you can share on turning points? Love to hear.
There's few that basically stand out. We had a manager at one of the companies before we started Createasoft who actually believed in the idea that we can automate things and make it more efficient by generating automation. I'm talking late 80s, early 90s timeframe. And he gave me that opportunity to actually prove that automation, and today it's very common, but back then it's very innovative in the way we work, that it will provide a workflow for people to operate, and it drives work to people instead of having people pull the work in. And we created a full workflow of operation that actually ended up being a product that the company was selling, generated some patents out of it. But he really gave me that idea that a lot of these things are possible. That's really the moment in my career where I said, you know what, it's time for me to do something different and move on.
So, I
And
mean,
that was the
everything,
start.
obviously, Createasoft is focused on process
Right.
simulation. Did you ever consider product simulation of an end product versus a process?
One of the key things that when we were developing that workflow system, I actually looked for a way to simulate that. I said, there's got to be some tool out there that allows me to simulate that workflow and show before we build it that is going to be beneficial. Unfortunately, at that time, the tools were very, very archaic. There was a few that kind of was able to show portions of the system, but nothing big enough that can show that overall environment. So that's when the idea came up. Like, there's got to be a way. And you know what? I can probably set up a team and build it and make it a product because there's a good need for something like that on the market. And that's how the Createasoft idea came about. So we were totally driven purely from the process perspective because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, through the years, and after we transitioned from pure simulation to a digital twin type implementation, the idea of actually creating digital twins of machines and and the details inside them actually become feasible because now we have the technology, we have the tools, computers are fast enough to actually be able to handle that. And we are actually implementing some of that. We have partnered with a company, a local company in the Chicago area, to actually do an initial proof of concept with them to actually develop these things. And they go more into the technology 5.0 because that allows you to basically see the machine from anywhere, be able to troubleshoot the machine. An AI engine can tell you what you should change and if what you're changing is not going to work, and show you in real time what's actually happening with VR and AR. So it's pretty cool implementation. It's quite a transition from the process system that we started with, but that's just because we now have a tool. And the other thing is the industry is accepting those type of environment. And I'm sure we'll discuss the acceptance factor here as we go along in the podcast.
So does that get into parameter design?
Yes, it goes into parameters, material that you feed the machine, how it operates, how it feedback. So you can really use the same environment, the same twin for training purposes, where you actually interact with the machine and if you put something wrong, you're not going to break it. You're going to just, the virtual twin is going to break, right? But then again, you've got that ability to support the machine from afar. So you don't need to have a seasoned, qualified person to support it. You need somebody who can follow the instructions, and the seasoned support person could be somewhere else in the world, just looking at what you're seeing and guiding you through. And if the person on the ground is making a mistake, it's automatically going to tell them, don't do that, in an environment that is understandable to that person. Hence the technology 5.0 aspect of it.
Nice, nice. I want to circle back to the name Createasoft. Can
Yes.
you share where that came from?
So, so initially we were keen on software. Our goal was to create software. I mean, the simulation environment was initially like the first thing that we were going to do, and the plan was to create other software packages, and so we're creating software, and that's where Createasoft came about. Of course, once we created the initial SIMCAD, and then it became, it what it is, we never created anything else except to support SIMCAD or expand on that environment. But it just, small things that you do early on in the process always impact those names, and it stuck with us. We had a few projects that we've done along the way that are not related to digital twin or simulation, but mainly just driving AI. And this was back in 2007, 2008, where we were actually using neural networks and AI in our tool set, where we built what is basically what would be today a competitor to TrueCar, or these systems that actually tells you whether you have a good deal, a bad deal, or what kind of features you have on the car, what you should buy. It does a full analysis of the market you're in. It tells you based on the mileage, the condition, where it was driven, what you should pay for the car. And we developed that specifically for a company here in Chicago that was driving luxury cars. And we had, the system was so effective that they were turning over anywhere between 50 to 60 cars a day on the sales side. And was extremely effective from that point, and then so that was one of the implementations we've done. It was very specific, so we did not end up marketing it just because it's really not in our main focus. So we have to keep focusing on our key simulation digital twin environment. And so that was a very interesting aspect where we used AI way before anybody understood what AI is. I mean, most people, we didn't say we had AI in it because no one would believe it at that point.
So 2011 comes around. That's when you came up with the concept of the digital twin. Is that
Exactly.
off of that?
Exactly. So 2011, we started working on digital twin, and it started with a CDC project that we did that actually gave us the idea of the digital twin, where everything is real. It actually consumes actual data. It performs like the actual system. It has those constraints of the system. And that's what we decided to do at that point, and to just switch. We always had simulation, so that's always going to be there, but actually start modifying the engines to be data driven, constraint driven, and rule driven type environment. So we can plug in any rules within the operation, feed the data in, and it'll tell us what we need to do. We had the AI engine, so we actually started building on that, and it became what it is today. On that note, I remember in one of the shows, and this is early 2013, 2014 timeframe, we had a guy come into the booth from a very prominent auto manufacturer, and I was explaining to him how the solution works. And the first thing that he told me after he heard me out, he had this funny look on his face and he said, "I don't believe you," straight up. And so being in that environment, I said, it is true and it is happening. And this is going to be the future of whatever we do. And he then shook his head and said, "I don't believe you. This is not going to happen." And he walked away. And that was really an eye opening for me, because I realized that there is actually more need for these type of tools than I ever imagined would be possible. I haven't seen that guy again, but if he hears the podcast at some point, I'm sure he would remember who he is.
And you've deployed in a few automotive companies since then,
Oh,
right?
we did. Yes, we have deployed in automotive companies, and it's been very successful. Specifically in automotive, it's been extremely successful.
Awesome. So just going back a little bit. So obviously you love this. So what do you enjoy most about, leading in technology in this space? Because you're tend to be at the bleeding edge, which is great, but sometimes has its challenges.
Exactly. I mean, being at the edge of technology like that is always, challenging, whether it is from the IT infrastructure that people would have, or accepting the fact that these tools now can do more than more than we ever imagined they can do, or from adopting them and pushing them to the workers and having the workers actually accept these as tools they can use to empower their role within the organization. So that's been a lot of the challenges from that point of view. Implementation wise, it's really not the problem. It's everything else that drives it. And lately, one of the key challenges we've been running against is cybersecurity,
Mm.
where cybersecurity is becoming to the point where companies are blocking everything to the point where they cannot even function anymore. We have an implementation that we're implementing, recently, that it's still ongoing, where it's been 2.5 months going through cybersecurity, where everything is on-prem. There is no data leaving their environment, but cybersecurity is blocking it. Whatever rules somebody put in, that really no one in the organization understands why. And it eventually, yesterday it got cleared. But just imagine 2.5 months of wasted time and wasted revenue, because it's saving them money for something that really doesn't exist. So this is one of the things where cybersecurity it has to evolve in order for organizations to actually grow into these new technologies. They have to figure out ways where they can let the company work while keeping it secure. And now they're going into the idea of, let's block everything, and then no one can attack us, but we can't work anymore.
Would you say that's one of your secrets that sets you apart from others, is that you're striving to enable the customer to be able to play so that they can see and believe? Is that one of your underlying mantras?
Absolutely. That's one of the key ones that we employ, to basically get them to believe in the solution that they are implementing, because they have to accept it. So in a way, we're guiding them through, but then at some point we pass that on to them, where they're actually doing this work. They're coming up with these ideas. And again, going back to where technology 5.0 is, and where the lean concepts are of empowering the worker, they all play together in the same form. It's empowering everybody to have ideas into the operation. The difference is now it's not my gut feeling or a value stream that I put on the board, and if I work the average math, it is good. It's actual facts based on what I'm running, what the cycle times are, or how many people I have, how the operation in the factory is running. It's actually live data, live information that you're feeding it. And that's what makes it beneficial. I mean, averages and law of averages, you can make everything works with the law of averages.
At
But
least
it's
half the
when you
time.
create exactly. So when you create that variability that you have on the line, exactly like the line behaves, things fall apart sometimes. And that's we see that all the time. They would say,
Yeah.
"Well, we did a simulation and it worked." I'm like, "Yeah, you did a simulation, but your schedule does not fit that distribution that you put in the simulation. So let's put your schedule in the AI system and then feed it into the digital twin and see what actually comes out. And then you realize that the solution doesn't work. So
Yeah.
now instead of spending millions implementing a solution that's going to give you a headache going forward, you stop, you readjust, and you spend the millions, but you know that it's going to work at the end. It's going to
Yeah.
save you a ton of headache.
And
A lot of people are just looking at the environment they're in. So when you're managing a line, you're just looking at the line in that time and in that space. So you're not looking at the overall operation, what that line is impacting pre and post the line. So that's where we see a lot of things where you put in the twin of the factory and they see their line and you're like, oh, if I'm doing this, then I'm causing the line downstream to run less efficient and then it's creating that trickle effect. And then they would realize that they really should change, right? They need to change the way they do things. Or maybe that optimization that they're doing on the line is exactly the opposite of what they should do because they're just creating a lot more product and that's just ending up waiting. And this is what I always call the hurry up and wait syndrome in
mm,
all the factories, where you build up so much inventory and then it just sits. And it just happens over and over. Everybody wants to do just in time, but no one really does just in time. And it's all piled up inventory everywhere.
yeah. Hajunka, very few ever make it to
Yeah,
that stage of level loading. So you
exactly.
it's very difficult. And to do it manually, quite honestly, I always said,
Yeah,
is it even practical that
yeah,
our minds could even figure this out?
exactly. So, but you see, this is where AI and all this technology come into place
Hmm.
because there is so much power in today's hardware that we can actually do this type of computation and provide this analytics and provide that scheduling to actually achieve those results. And technology is always evolving. Hardware is really making all this stuff accessible to a lot of people. I mean, your phone today is a lot more powerful than the PC we had, 20 years ago. And that's really what driving all this new technology. And now we can. And it's that human ingenuity that's coming up to say, let's make things better. And fine, we can use AI along the way and to help us do whatever we need to do a lot more efficiently. And then we have more time to go biking, right? I mean, that's and I that's one of the key things is if I can get done early today, then you know, although you can just pick up the bike and go for a couple-hour ride. Today you can't because there's so many things that you have to do. So let's use AI to improve our quality of life for the most part and make work easier for us so we can enjoy things more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, can you provide an example of how you've turned failure into success? You know,
There's quite a few implementations where we did turn a failure into success, and people would just totally not accept the change, totally not accept the technology, and say it's not going to work, it's not performing correctly. And then we just basically pull back at that point and see where we missed the target. Because if they're not believing it, and if there are no naysayers on their side, then it's something we did wrong. And we have to acknowledge that. So so we go back, we actually rethink in how we did. And on our own time, we actually will refine the solution, figure out what happened, and we go back in and represent the changes that we have done. And that happened, I would say, 3 or 4 times in the last 12 years or 13 years Oh, it's 2025. It's been 14 years now. So it did happen before, and we go back and readjust, and it's harder to for them to adopt it at that point, but they all did adopt it at the end because they realized that that change actually made it better for them. But that's it. It's really not on the client. It's on us to accept that we did something that's not exactly what they needed and fixing it so that we can make their life better. And that's been the key thing there.
So I'm gonna turn the next question around on you and ask the same question for you because you're changing everyone else. Now, what changes, when have you turned a failure into success in your own career?
Oh man, the number of failures is quite a bit. But if you don't fail, you don't succeed. And if you don't understand the meaning of failure, then you would never understand the meaning of success. Every person who's been through this journey had a lot of failures. And for me, there's just so many.
So just share
What
share at
actually
least
made
one
it,
story,
I'll
good
just talk
story.
about what made me get back on track
Okay.
and actually turn these failures into successes. And it's really a lot of experiences from people who I got involved with. And whether it'll be family or training partners, I've been doing martial arts for quite a long time. I would say since I was 10 or 11, I've done many different arts. The one thing that people don't realize with martial arts and the true meaning of it is that it helps you to be focused. It helps you to be self-disciplined in what you do. It's not how you kick and how you move, and this is all great because it helps you stay physically active, but it's really all the other components that keep you focused on what you're doing. And in all of these, the failure is really getting hit, right? So whenever you get hit, you failed because or somebody throws you or whatever, then that's a failure. But they always teach you, and the good teachers, the good martial art instructors will teach you that if you get hit, you have to learn to stay up and be able to fight back and to be able to do something so that next time you get that same hit, you don't get hit with it. You know what to do and you move away or you defend it in one way. But in order to achieve that, you have to really be in the moment. You have to be very self-conscious of that state you're in at that point in time and really concentrate on what you're doing. If you're sparring somebody and you start thinking about, the bike ride that you're going to go on next tomorrow, believe me, you're going to get hit and a lot, then it's going to hurt. But you only focus on that moment that you're doing. And one of the masters one time told me, or he gave us a lecture, and he said there was one person who was always happy. Everybody was one. He had a very simple life, but he was always happy. So he was asked on why that is the case, and he said it's very simple. When I want to eat, I eat. When I want to walk, I walk. When I want to sleep, I sleep. And it makes perfect sense. But really, what he means is what I'm eating, I'm really just eating. I'm enjoying the food. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not watching TV. I'm concentrating on that moment that I'm eating. And that makes, after he said it, it makes perfect sense. But today's world, we're always doing other things. We never really concentrating on what we're working on. And that, I heard that story maybe 12, 13 years ago, and it stuck with me. And it's very interesting how that changes your perspective on everything you're doing. And that helped me tremendously.
So living for the moment,
Living the moment,
living the
living the
moment,
moment.
searching for the moments, and
Yeah,
and really experiencing and enjoying each moment.
exactly. Exactly. There's no bad moment. There's no bad time. Every moment has good and bad. right?
Yeah.
So as long as you only look at the good, you'll always be happy.
Hmm. There you go. Live for the moments. Now we
Yep.
know what that means, really. So, are there any, you mentioned that, are there any folks that inspire you?
I get a lot of inspiration from my son, actually. He's now 25. When he was born, he was diagnosed with basically he was a trisomy 13 diagnosis, and he was given 10 days. So the doctors came in, and I was with my wife, and they said, look, you've got mainly 10 days, if that, and then he probably won't be with us. But he fought. We worked with him. We helped him. They said he will not walk. He walked. He said they will not laugh. He laughed. He said they would not. Everything they said he would not do, he was doing. And for me, that's just the moment this all that's change that he's been through really helped me understand that, you know, not just living the moment, but if you try, you'll always get where you want to get. And I always look at them and say, you know, 25 years ago, they told us that you will not be here, and there you are. And he's a happy person, you know, but it's out of everybody, I would say I learned so much from him than from anybody else.
That's really a great story. Great. Thanks for sharing. A lot of perseverance, huh?
Yes, exactly.
Is that the word
Exactly.
that comes to my
Yep.
mind when I hear
That's
what you
true.
say? All right. Well, kind of switching gears now. Technology trends, what you see in the future. I mean, you're on the cutting edge. You're probably 2 to 5 years ahead of everybody else. So maybe kind of just share what are some of the big things that have happened over the last couple years that has really changed and brought us closer to, industry 5.0, technology 5.0, whatever you want to call it. What are your thoughts?
So, I'm sure you heard me say that before, but I think COVID was the greatest thing that happened to technology 4.0 and 5.0. I think it was a time where people had time to actually understand and pull back from the daily chaos that we go through and actually start learning what these tools can do for us. And since then, there has been huge, huge acceptance of what Industry 4.0 is and AI. And really, it's really AI more than anything. Definitely, ChatGPT had a huge impact because now they made it accessible to everybody, and people could realize how much it can do. The industry, though, hasn't accepted it as a tool to use yet. I mean, some industries have, but very, very small number that have accepted it. They're still talking about a digital twin without AI, and a digital twin for a lot of companies is the visual representation of the facility. It's really not the way it functions. So I see that in the next 2 to 5 years, there's going to be more adoption of that AI digital twin implementation. There's going to be more AI in everything we do that helps us achieve what we need to get done during the day, and basically allows people to have more time to innovate or to just enjoy things beyond work, beyond just being always there to handle things. So that's where I see it going. A lot of people would adopt it, some people will fight it, and eventually it's just going to be the norm, and we're just going to move on. And I always refer to the self-driving cars. They're here. People don't believe them. I know they're not 100% accurate. They're 99 point something percent accurate. But man, who would imagine 5 years ago that we would actually be in a car that just drives you from point A to point B,
They're still
and you don't
safer
have to
than
do anything?
most of the drivers on the road. Most
I
the
mean,
yeah, they're still safer than the majority. Would you
Exactly.
rather, if you were an insurance company, would you rather insure an AI driven car or, a self-driving car or your mother? You know,
Exactly.
I mean,
Yep.
you're going to choose, obviously, you're going to, or your daughter or yourself for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So it's, it's kind of funny, strange, funny, not
Yep.
that we are so slow to adopt. We have so many car accidents every year, and so many people die. We're willing to accept human error for death, but we're not yet willing to accept a autonomous vehicle run through AI a death like that.
Yep.
And but it's a liability issue, right?
It is. It is.
Who is at fault when an AI algorithm goes bad in making a decision and somebody dies?
Right.
Who's at fault? And I think that's nobody knows how to answer that question yet.
It's evolving, just like everything else. It's in a few months or few years that will be solved. They'll figure out a way to identify that, and that's when everybody accepts it. I think it's just that's the final hurdle for that acceptance. Automation is going to cause some workforce reduction, right? Now, there are people within the workforce who will adopt the automation and help it and make it work, and those guys will stay around. The companies need those kind of people. And then there are the folks who don't want the automation to work, who always get in the way and want to prove that they are better than automation. And unfortunately, these are the people who will end up leaving the workforce and having to find something else. And that's just the way things are going to be. It's just the way the industry is going. And the faster we adopt these technologies, the better we're going to be going forward.
So where does data fit into that?
Oh, data is at the heart of everything. AI without data is nothing. It can't function. The only reason AI is working today is because we fed it a lot of data and we made it learn. So the companies will always tell you, "Oh, I don't have the data," or "My data is not complete." And whenever anybody said something like that to me, I said, "How do you run your company? If you run your company, then you have data to run the company. It may be in a notepad, but you have data, you have rules. AI can create those relationships with all the data, although it may not make sense to us as human because we cannot compute that much in our brains, but AI can do that. So everybody has data, and data is always king. And regenerative AI will evolve. You're going to start with a data set as things change. There's real data coming into the system, into that AI engine, and that's going to make that engine learn more and understand the operation more and continue to evolve as the system evolves. Adding or modifying different things within the organization or within the flow, an AI engine should be able to pick it up. If I change my routing to a specific part, the AI engine would know that the routing has changed. It can check with the ERP and say, is that routing valid? Is that something that I want to do? Or did somebody on the line decide to just use this machine instead? And if it is somebody just working from their own initiative, and believe me, that happens a lot, and they use another machine because they think it's better, then that's when it starts to tell you you should not do that. And in the future AI systems, it'll be the engine telling that person, don't do that, because when you do this, this is the ramification of the change that you made. And instead of saving those 3 seconds on the machine, you actually cost us 15 minutes downstream. And please don't do that again. In a word and in a way that people understand without making it very offensive. So that's how these things will work. Technology wise, we're very close to that level. Adoption wise, from organization, we're very far from that.
Yeah.
Companies are very afraid of jumping into these things because they think they're going to take over everything they do. They just don't always see it as augmenting what they do. It's just taking over. And that's not the idea of any of the AI systems that are out there.
So that I think this is a good time to bring up the the concept of an AI companion versus
Yep.
an AI agent. So can you just build on that in that direction?
Yeah. So I mean, AI companions now this year has been is it's becoming very available to everybody. I mean, whether Google or Apple or Samsung or all these companies are coming up with a companion that you can talk to. It's very scary where it's going from that perspective. But then agents are very cryptic, so this is where it's really merging the two together. We have to be able to combine the two, and we are working internally on some ways to basically make the companion work with the agent to basically make their recommendations and the commands and the interaction to be more human friendly. But I think it's a few years from getting to the point where it's where it needs to be. It's within the next 2 years.
So do you see that an AI something will evaluate your current capabilities and what you are capable of doing, and you will have an agent, or I mean a companion that will aid you to accomplish the role, the goals of the set of tasks that need to be complete?
Yeah, I can tell you for a fact that today's systems and even our system, our digital twin studio system, can identify what a person can do and what are the activities that they need to achieve and where they need to be placed. It has it in a data form. And companies have been very reluctant from using that, for various reasons that, they never want to say that the automation system or the AI told me that you will work better here than where you like to work and you're less efficient, but you enjoy that space because your buddy Fred sits next to you. Okay. So they're slowly moving into that, but they still haven't figured out how to make that transition to say you work better here. And we've been asked by specific companies to basically turn off those features. The system is still learning in the background, but it's not recommending any of that. So it can say, based on the task, we should ask Joe to come in and work on this, and Ellie should go work on this other part because this is where she works best. But we turn that off.
You turn that off because it's the EQ, right? Because a lot of folks
Exactly.
say, it's all about the EQ, that humans are going to be measured on their EQ versus their IQ, right? That's
Yep,
the thing.
exactly.
So I guess, are we going to be happier if we work on our EQ? And if we really want to be excelling at something in a role, most people are doing jobs they really don't want to do.
True.
Like you said, COVID made people wake up and say, I don't want to do that job anymore. Where do you see technology 5.0 changing that rigidity that's in ERPs today in the next 2 to 3 years?
SAP, ERP, WMSs, and all these systems are going to be with us for a long time. They're not going away. But as you said, they are a data store. They store a lot of data. They organize it in a specific way that we can run reports and see what's happening. But they don't have any vision to what will happen in the future of the company. They're just showing based on very specific rules what, how things should be scheduled. They don't understand the life system. They don't understand what will happen tomorrow. They just live in the past with purely data analytics on what happened yesterday and how we're going to perform. AI is not set up to do this. AI is set up to see how we can optimize now and how I can optimize tomorrow. That's really why I use AI. I let AI understand and learn from the past, and I needed to optimize my now. And I needed to optimize how I'm progressing into the future so I have the best outcome through the operation. That's where none of the tools actually are venturing into that mode. They're just happy in that space of the yesterday and whatever data store it's been happening, and how to run that mundane stuff that happens within every organization. And that goes, to the healthcare and the EMRs and all those things. I think what we are going to see is a lot of integration between those systems that exist today with the new AI-based systems, whether it is a digital twin based or not, but where they're going to consume those AI digital twin systems will consume data from those data stores, and then they will generate their own set of new components and new vision of what things should be done going forward. Now they can push data back to drive the operation, but they will run in conjunction with the SAPs and ERPs and EMRs that are out there. The one thing that I always like to point out is industries don't share between industries, don't share ideas or advancements or any of that stuff. This is from a presentation that I did one time for healthcare. This was early on in the 2007, 2008 timeframe, and we were venturing into healthcare, and I had no idea how the healthcare systems actually name everything that they use. So there's a key naming convention that you have to stay within, otherwise you don't give them a valid idea. But this is not to point to healthcare. It's just the idea that when I looked at the emergency department, I saw a high mix, high volume type operation. I did not see it as patients flowing in and out. So my idea back then was to improve an ED based on advancement in high mix type systems, because that's what they have. You have every person walking in, they have a different problem. They will have different cycle times throughout. The treatment is kind of starts to be similar, then it diverges based on the condition. And there's an outcome, either they get admitted, they get discharged at the end, right? There's really two things that can happen. So when I presented that, and at this healthcare conference where everybody was healthcare, and I said, this is exactly like a manufacturing high mix, high volume operation, everybody looked at me with this face that I should leave the room.
Mm-hmm. They're
And
being insulted.
exactly, it's like I insulted everybody in the room. And it's the idea was, think of it from a different perspective. There are tools out there that are very well known that help you actually organize your ED and understand where the problems are, that are proven that worked. And they just totally missed that point. And I see that even today. I see that with industries in manufacturing, where if you are in textiles, you only look at the textile solution. Well, guess what? You're not the only one moving stuff. There's a lot of other industries that are moving something very similar. Look at what they're doing and try to get those ideas together. And people still don't do that. They're all their own environments. And that's why that digital twin AI or whatever AI system happens to be to optimize and evolve to technology 5.0 will have to sit on top of these systems.
It's in the creases.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
that
Exactly.
the opportunity lies. Very often people focus on optimizing a 4 or 5 steps to the core part of the process. To save the most amount of money, all you have to do is go one step upstream and one step downstream, and you can save more money than you ever could on
Yeah,
optimizing those 5 core steps.
sure.
And people don't understand it's in the creases and the wrinkles that actually drive opportunities.
Right.
And I guess we have to get old and wrinkly to realize that.
You see, the other important thing is all these systems, all these new enabling technology 5.0 systems do not impact the operation as it's running. It's not like today. Today you're implementing SAP. You stop doing any improvement for 2 years until SAP is in place,
Yeah.
right? And these systems just sit next to them. They're not it's not disrupting the operation. It's not impacting anything. Your plant is running the way it runs. Your warehouse is running the way it works. Hospitals are still running, but it's just adding that value as it's being implemented on the side and feeding the systems back. So they're non-obtrusive type systems, but they have a huge ROI that everyone can benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be a while before everybody adopt these as a solution.
Yeah. Thanks, Hosni. So I want to change gears. Our last topic here is the state of the economy, the very easy topic of where the economy is going that everybody's very familiar with. I'm being sarcastic, obviously. But, obviously technology is driving a lot in the US and globally. And, the US is leading the charge from a technology innovation perspective, but from an execution perspective, we're lagging the rest of the world, which is interesting all in itself. So, what is your take on that? That's going to happen over the next, this next crucial 4 or 5 years.
So I see companies who start to adopt these technologies are going to be farther ahead, of course. As you said, I'm just going to backtrack slightly. Some of definitely the adoption of that AI-driven environment is more adopted in outside of the US than it is inside the US. A lot of the technology is developed here, but it is implemented outside.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is driven by the fact that in other part of the world, specifically in Europe and part of Asia, there is a constraint that they have to go through, which is space. We're we're blessed in the US where, if you're building a warehouse, you can always add something to it because you have the space. They don't have that same benefit. So they have to come up with ways to do more with what they have at that point. And AI is providing a solution for that, right? It's helping them do these things, and they're seeing that it's working, and they're adopting it more. The US is running behind, and a lot of it is a lot of the middle management are afraid to take on these challenges and these changes because they don't want to lose or upset the scheduler within the organization. They want to upset the person who's been there for 25 years and knows everything about the operation. It's just the state of the business. They have to adopt it because all that knowledge that exists today with all these people could be put into that AI. And then that person can now evolve more and do more things and be more active within the organization instead of just being the person. They can do a lot more than just answer those questions. So eventually, companies will have to adopt those. Companies that don't will have a much higher cost of operation, and eventually, they will be either phased out or they will be bought by other companies who have extra cash because they adopted technologies and they have more money. AI is
Yeah.
going nowhere. The calculator didn't
It's
go
not a
anywhere.
fad.
It's not a fad. It's not a fad. It's here. It's working. It works. It will make things better for everybody, and it will even get better as time progresses. It has to be adopted. In my opinion, any company that does not adopt it at this point will not be able to compete in the world market.
Well, that's a good way to end our talk today. Thank you so much. Great pleasure speaking with you and learning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.